Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin' Around WDW. Welcome back, flight crew. We are here this week to wrap up our Parks of the Present Epcot series. I can't believe we are here. It's been a long haul. Epcot has a lot to kind of talk about and a lot of changes over the years. So we are wrapping it up today in World Celebration, the final section of the park. And we wanted to start out with a little bit of Epcot Ball or Spaceship Earth history. So a little bit behind why they chose this as the icon of the park and kind of how it came to life, which was a pretty interesting story. The All Ears website had a pretty extensive history piece on Spaceship Earth and how it came to be. And the initial concept was actually born in the mid 1970s when Walt Disney had this initial dream of this experimental prototype community of tomorrow, which then eventually obviously became Epcot. First, it was called Epcot Center, today, just Epcot. And since the park was basically going to be this permanent World's Fair, the Imagineers really took a lot of inspiration for the icon from the United States Pavilion at the 1967 International and Universal Exposition, or it was called the Expo 67 in Montreal, Canada. So the structure was designed by a person named Buckminster Fuller, and it was supposed to initially be this geodesic dome. Fuller also is the one who came up with the name for the attraction Spaceship Earth, but Disney decided to take things a little bit further and created an entire sphere instead of just a dome. And the Imagineers actually took 2 years to create the sphere and the ride within it. And Spaceship Earth is really a really impressive feat of engineering because it actually consists of two spheres, which I did not realize. One holds the ride inside, and the other makes up the exterior that you see that makes up the icon of the park. And the Imagineering team brought this to life over time by essentially building two individual domes, one upside down and on top of each other, and set it on six giant legs covering the structure with these triangular tiles. Structurally, the complete Spaceship Earth stands 180 feet tall, with structural pylons running underground as deep as 160 feet, which is pretty impressive for Florida swamplands when you're thinking about they had to really plan this out and where the elevation was, where the water levels were. Initially, Disney planned on having the bulk of the Spaceship Earth attraction to be housed in a show building behind the sphere, like they've done with many other attractions that we've talked about, like Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean. And initially, they thought only the end would happen within the actual structure. However, in the end, Disney decided to have the entire ride housed within the sphere using this twisting Omnimover ride system that would wind up and down a circular ramp. And looking at pictures of this, I'll have to pop some into the YouTube page if you guys are watching on YouTube. But it is super interesting to see. I guess I've realized that there's no obviously back of house portion of this like there is for Haunted Mansion. But the actual ride, looking at the track, you go really high up in that sphere. And I think like I never really realized that until I looked at some of these pictures of the inside when they were doing the construction. It was pretty neat to see. Some other changes that have happened to the actual Epcot ball before we get into the attraction of Spaceship Earth itself is in 1999, as part of the Millennium Celebration, a 25-foot story representation of Mickey Mouse's arms holding this magic wand and spelling out the number 2000 was placed on top of the sphere and attached to it. The following year, in 2000, the 2000 was replaced, or I guess in 2001, the 2000 number was replaced by the word Epcot in a scripted font, and the wand was very unpopular. And so a lot of people did not like it, wanted it to come down. And even though everybody was upset about it, it actually stayed there until 2007. And at the request of the sponsor Siemens, because they took over the sponsorship for the attraction for Spaceship Earth from AT&T that year, and they said that wand and the word has got to go. So they gave it the kibosh, they got rid of it, and now it just sits as it has for the last few years. They've obviously added a lot of lighting and different things to the globe. If you have been in recent years, it's really beautiful at night, and they do a lot of this, synchronized lights to the music, and you can see it from really far away if you're staying at hotels across different properties and you have a good view of Spaceship Earth. It's really cool to watch it light up at night, like even after they do their fireworks show and everything like that. As we talked about last week for our trivia, there were 11,324 tiles that were used to make up the outside of Spaceship Earth, which is pretty neat. So overall, this, globe came from an initial idea of just being a dome. And I don't like we talked about, I did not realize that. Did you know that, Dad, that at first they thought about it just being a dome and not an entire like sphere structure?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of old YouTube videos about the actual building of Epcot, and they did a time lapse photography of Spaceship Earth getting built, and that's where I saw how they did it. And that was actually a number of years ago, but it's on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it. It's very interesting. But they build the whole thing in like in I don't know 5 minutes or something. But it shows you how they put the ramps in and everything, and then build the outer shell and put on the tiles and everything. It's pretty cool. But yeah, I was aware that that's the way it was built for quite a while now.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then obviously I'm sure you remember going for the Millennium because we were there. What do you remember about being there on New Year's Eve for the Millennium when we went in 2000?
One thing I remember was there was a lot of people there.
Yeah, big
And
shocker. Yeah.
Epcot's a really big park. I know like the Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios is relatively small, but uh, I was just surprised. I mean, maybe not surprised, probably expected because this is a really big celebration, right? But yeah, I think that if I remember right, there was I don't know if there was a special fireworks show. I don't recall all that. This is 25 years ago now, but I just remember there being a lot of people, but it was a lot of fun. And I do remember the 2000 and the wand on on Spaceship Earth. A lot of people call it the big golf ball, but
Hmm.
yeah, I remember and then the Millennium Celebration stuff that went through the World Showcase. You probably remember
Oh yeah.
that parade that went through there, and that's probably another podcast. But yeah, I remember it being a lot of fun, and it was a very late night for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were pretty young. Like, so in 2000, Regan would have been 7, and no, I would have been 7. Regan would have been like 4.
Or
So yeah,
yeah,
that's hard to believe. So yeah, we were really young, but I do remember it being a big deal. All the kids, like Latoya, Regan, and I had matching shirts that we got made with our names on them, and it was, this big celebration. I think we stayed at Swan and Dolphin, if I'm remembering right from pictures.
I think you're
And
right.
so yeah, it was obviously walkable and the boat and everything from Epcot, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I don't remember a lot about it. Obviously, I was very young, but I do remember it being a very late night and a big deal to get to stay up that late. That's for sure. And I actually had kind of forgot that they changed the 2000 to Epcot and kept the hand and the wand and everything there so long that that did not like jog my memory at all. But seeing the pictures, I was like, oh, okay. I kind of do remember them changing it. I don't think it made a difference to me one way or another, but I'm glad that they did eventually get rid of it because I think it looks great just on its own, especially with what they've done with the lighting. It's very beautiful.
Yes.
And then moving on to Spaceship Earth, the first attraction in this section. So this opened with the park opening day, October 1st, 1982. And while they were designing the exterior portion, the actual structure of Spaceship Earth, the show producers that worked as Imagineers, they were attempting to kind of figure out what kind of attraction they wanted to be inside the actual ride. So eventually, they used the help of legendary science fiction writer Ray Bradbury, and they decided to settle on this trip through the entire history of humanity. So, because the attraction was sponsored initially by the Bell System network of telephone companies, they wanted to put this heavy emphasis on the concept of communication kind of throughout history and how evolutions in communication technology played this big role in all of humanity's history. So taking this history through communication theme as their main focal point, the attraction as it appeared on opening day in 1982 actually isn't really that different than what it is now. It hasn't gone through a lot of changes, but it has had some updates, which we'll get into. But guests still board this Omnimover vehicle at the structure's base and then ride up the ramp. Once they reach the top of the ramp, they actually are going through all these animatronic scenes that tell the story of human history. So, first, kind of moving from the cavemen to ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, the Dark Ages, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution. And then at the time, they had this modern computer technology section, which is what has mostly been updated today. So, during the construction, the actual end of the attraction was supposed to be this massive set piece set on a moon base that was going to be featured at the very top of Spaceship Earth's structure, while a projected image of the Earth and the satellite and the space station props kind of hung above them. But the installation of these props actually happened. And then they realized that, according to some sources, Imagineers weren't really satisfied with the moon sets. They kind of thought the forced perspective didn't really work. They didn't like it. So they actually abandoned the scene and just covered up pieces of the moon set that had been built with these dark pieces of fabric and lowered the lighting so the animatronic astronauts kind of hovering around the satellite as well as the space station commander were barely visible. So it kind of left the rides ending as this kind of simple planetarium style projected visual of Earth before riders went down the ramp backwards to the ground level before exiting the attraction and went on to this Project Tomorrow post show. The initial version of the ride that opened with Epcot when the park opened on October 1st, 1982 was a success immediately, but the first changes came about 4 years later in 1986 because the US Bell system was declared a monopoly, and so the US government broke it up, and then AT&T kind of took over as one of the companies that came out of this, dispersion of the Bell system. And so they became the attraction sponsor. So they requested and bankrolled a lot of changes, which were implemented later that year. So the ride scripted narration was re-recorded by a veteran news anchor named Walter Cronkite. And initially, the narration had been done by an actor, Lawrence Dobkin, or radio host Vic Perrin. Both men had ties to Disney, and actually, no one knows for sure which one was the initial narrator, which I thought was kind of interesting. In the addition, the attraction's post-show area was updated to kind of promote AT&T and work more with what their vision of the company was when they took over after the Bell system was disbanded. In the early 90s, Disney actually planned to build an updated version of Spaceship Earth, and they were going to call it Space Station Earth as the centerpiece of Westcott, which was the planned second gate at the Disneyland Resort in California, which I did not realize that they had planned this attraction over there. However, the plan initially was actually for this same sphere-like structure to be larger and gold-colored. Then, due to different financial and political issues, the park ended up being canceled over there, this Westcott, and they replaced it with California Adventure, and they didn't feature anything at all like Spaceship Earth when California Adventure opened. In 1994, Spaceship Earth was given its first truly major refurbishment in conjunction with AT&T kind of renewing their sponsorship for the attraction. And Jeremy Irons was the person who redid the narration. And you might know his name. He's familiar because he voiced Scar in the animated movie, the original Lion King. And the first half of the ride with this update in 1994 really remained unchanged. There really wasn't much that they did different. But the later portion where they started to get into what was present day technology, obviously a lot changed between the early 80s and the early 90s. So they updated these things. The scenes that kind of featured this 80s technology were replaced with different video phones. And then they also changed the ending to have a larger projection of the Earth. They removed the astronauts and the satellite and kind of blacked out the space station and the animatronic. The refurbishment also saw the addition of several dioramas depicting a lot of futuristic communication methods. And then you rode backwards through the post show to the global neighborhood. In that same version, that really stayed for about 10 years. And initially, there was this plan in the early 2000s that they were calling Project Gemini, and it would have kind of replaced Spaceship Earth completely. They were planning to gut it and totally get rid of it and do a roller coaster called the Time Racers, which we'll have to kind of get into one day when we talk about old things that never came to be in Disney. But when the wand was removed in the exterior of Spaceship Earth in 2007, they did this massive refurbishment, and it was the first one since 1994. So the narrator changed to Dame Judi Dench, and then the first half of the ride again kind of has stayed the same. The animatronics were kind of updated or removed from some of these sequences. And then some major changes were kind of saved again for the back half of this attraction. The changes that they made included new scenes kind of depicting the invention of the first home computer. And it was supposed to kind of represent Silicon Valley entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak from Apple. And this early supercomputer from the 1960s, as well as this new interactive ending where you kind of choose your path, which is similar to how it is today. Siemens sponsorship also ended in 2017, but the version of the attraction really is pretty much the same. The only real big change that they had was in August 2019. They announced that they would be doing this reimagining of Spaceship Earth when they were doing this huge change plan in Epcot that they announced at D23. And the Epcot or and Spaceship Earth was supposed to be updated with a new narrative about the human experience and the art of storytelling. However, this all got the kibosh when the coronavirus, as almost everything else in Epcot that they had planned, either got put on hold or canceled altogether. And this was put on indefinite hiatus. They haven't said anything else about it since everything else got built. So, if you are a longtime listener of our show, we have found a couple of really cool Easter eggs that Dad talked about when we were talking about the Magic Kingdom. And that is that some of these animatronic figures that were used throughout the attraction might look familiar because they were used from molds of previous presidents from the Hall of Presidents. So, some examples of what is listed here would be Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was president from 1953 to 1961. He became the mandolin player. William Howard Taft became the Egyptian priest in the Rome, and then in the Rome scenes, the centurion is the U.S. President Zachary Taylor, Gutenberg as James Buchanan, and Andrew Jackson operating the press. So lots of reused presidents, which I think is kind of a little fun tidbit if you didn't catch that in our earlier episode. Also, another really cool fact is if you weigh up all the ride vehicles, the scenes, and then the sphere itself, the Spaceship Earth attraction weighs a whopping total of 16 million pounds, which is crazy to think about. The infamous burning charcoal scent has also become a cult classic at Disney World, and people say that the actual scent that they use for that is something like smoked paprika, and that's what they sell. Like some people buy it as like a candle or a melted scent, which is so interesting to me. It's an interesting scent. And then I know a really cool thing that I found when I was researching this ride was how the set pieces were kind of brought up to the top of the ball. And I guess behind the Jewish Islam scene, there's actually an elevator, and the back wall slides open from right to left. And it's this big freight elevator back there that they use to kind of do when they're doing reconstruction of things. But I think that's also a big reason why a lot of this hasn't changed because history has not changed, but also it would be really difficult to get stuff up and down to the top of this ball. So that's a lot of it about Spaceship Earth and some background on it. Dad, what were some of your favorite things about this attraction and the changes that they've done over the years, and what do you think, moving forward, it might look like in the future?
I've always loved the attraction. I still do. I get a little giddy going up. We get on it and go up, and I don't know why. I know we've gone on it so many times when you kids were little, and with Michaela my other granddaughter when she was growing up. But beyond that, I like the idea of the whole history. It's back to kind of that World's Fair feel that they
Yeah,
started Epcot back in '82. Um, and I don't think it's ever going to go away. Could you imagine them ever pulling that out of there? They
no.
talked about doing that roller coaster. I heard that a long time ago. I don't think it'll ever go away. They'll probably just do some updating and different things, especially in the scene where you go back to Earth, right? You turn around backwards at the top and go backwards.
Yeah.
They've changed that a little bit over the years. because there's really not much happening there. It's kind of boring, right? Heading back
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
But yeah, I have just real fond memories of it. I think it's a engineering marvel, to say the least. And I'm always, even when I write it now, I always look around beyond the scene sets because I've seen the scene sets so many times, and try to pick out different mechanical things that are going on, or what's that door over there? You start noticing some of the stuff when you write anything as much as we have. But I do like the behind the scenes stuff too. I wish that there's some way that offers some sort of
Tour,
behind the
yeah.
scenes tour of Epcot where they would take you up that service elevator. I think that would be like really cool. It was like after hours or something. But yeah, so I have fond memories. I love Spaceship Earth.
Yeah, I really can't imagine them ever getting rid of this attraction. I think that there's just people would riot. I think there's so much history there. And again, like you said, the ending they could probably change or the little thing where you pick your journey or
Mhm.
whatever. But for the most part, I think the attraction is a really cool history lesson and a great way to kind of talk about the changes in communication through the years. They'll probably have to keep updating the end or adding to it. I don't know how they'll keep up with that over the years because there's just so much change so quickly with communication and technology, but it's neat that they added the, Apple Steves in there and it kind of made that into a little addition at the end. I think that that was a really cool change that didn't really take away from much, which is nice. So, yeah.
They should make the last scene when they update it a family sitting around a dinner table all looking at their phones. It'd
Yeah,
be perfect.
yeah, very realistic. Yeah, yeah, that's true. So yeah, I could see them getting rid of like the ending where you are going in the dark and it's just the globe. I could see them, eventually updating and adding some scenes there or something like that. But for the most part, I'd be shocked if this ever, totally got gutted and changed. I think people would lose their minds. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And then the next attraction is actually the meet and greet. So Meet Mickey and Friends. This is a pretty recent addition. It just opened June 10th, 2024. So actually after you and I went, Dad, with the kids. But Eiley and I did get the chance to do this in March. It's very new, but obviously, in my opinion, was a very cheap way to renovate some of this intervention space. But it works. It's a space where you meet Goofy, Minnie, and Mickey, but you only wait in one line, which is the beauty of it. So you meet all three. They're all kind of in a room and you go from one person to the next, kind of like when you meet Anna and Elsa in Norway. You wait in one line, but you get to meet both and get pictures with, each one individually. And when we were there, we waited about 20 minutes or so, maybe not even. So it was a really good experience. The indoor portion is all air conditioned. There is a little bit of an outdoor portion to the queue, but it's covered. So if it's raining, you can still stand out there. And I had a really, good experience. I would definitely go back. I hate that this is what they use some of that intervention space for, but I think they just ran out of money after doing Guardians and Moana and all these different things that they had to kind of take it down a notch from what they initially had planned. But I think it's a good, good character meet and greet. I love when you can wait in one line and meet multiple people. That is like totally my jam instead of having to wait in each line individually in the hot sun, like a lot of the Magic Kingdom meet and greets are. But yeah, I think it's cute. It's definitely a good one. I highly liked it. And then the third attraction in this section of the park is the Disney and Pixar Short Film Festival. This was initially opened the Pixar version of this December 23rd, 2015. And there are three shorts that are shown in this theater. The first one is called Feast, which is the story kind of following this culinary adventure of a Boston Terrier named Winston. This initially came out with the movie Big Hero 6. The second short is Piper, which is a really cute one and tells the story of this hungry baby sandpiper who's learning to overcome her fear of the ocean. And this came out with Finding Dory, so quite a few years ago. And then Get a Horse, which premiered with Frozen, is still being shown with these other two shorts. So all of these, though, are on Disney Plus. So it feels like a little bit of a waste of space in the Disney Plus era. Like this theater is there. I wish they would do something different. I really do think eventually they're going to have to totally redo this entire pavilion where Figment is and make it into something a little bit different. It's almost always empty. I've never gone to the Pixar Short Film Festival, but I had been when it was Captain EO and when it was Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, both of those. I only went to Captain EO like once. I don't have very strong memories of that, but the Honey, I Shrunk the Audience we did a few times. And so I wish they do something different if they're going to keep it as a theater space, but really they could knock it down and totally get rid of it, and do something different. But it's about 18 minutes long. It is a 4D show, so you have to wear those 3D glasses. It was the same when it was Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. Was Captain EO a 3D glasses show, or was it just a regular show? Do you
I
remember?
think it was just a regular show. I just saw it once, and that was enough.
Okay, yeah, you didn't
Even
love
though I
it.
was a Michael Jackson fan, or more of a Jackson 5 fan growing up, the whole group, that movie I thought was absolutely horrendous. Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. I wish they would have kept that because that was actually pretty darn good, I thought.
Yeah.
I wish they would have just kept that. I wish they would have kept that around and dropped the whole Captain EO thing. But I think that was tied in with Coca-Cola at the time. He had a lot of Coca-Cola things, or
Uh-huh.
maybe it was Pepsi. I don't know. It must have been Coke since it was at since it was at Disney. But I do. That's my memory of that. But beyond that, the other movie you're talking about, never saw that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I liked Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. I really like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as like a 90s kid, and I loved the playset that was at Hollywood Studios, so I liked that. I know it's probably not still popular, but I don't know, now that my age of people are growing up with their kids, I think it'd be fun to have that back as something different. So just something unique for sure. And then Journey into the Imagination with Figment. This opened June 2nd, 2002 in its current version, but initially it opened as Journey into Imagination and was there from 1983 to 1988. The original version of the attraction opened on March 5th of 1983, and Tony Baxter and Steve Kirk were the people behind this attraction. It began with omnimover vehicles kind of floating in the clouds and seeing silhouettes of strange blimps mixed with a vacuum cleaner and hearing the humming and singing of its pilot. And in the next scene, the riders come to the right of this vessel, and the pilot, who's this red bearded guy dressed in a blue suit and a top hat, introduces himself as the Dreamfinder. And the person who voiced the Dreamfinder was Chuck McCann. And he said that he uses this vehicle called the Dream Mobile or the Dream Catcher to collect dreams and ideas and create all sorts of things. So soon he creates a figment of his imagination, which has two tiny wings, eyes big and yellow, horns of a steer, but a lovable fellow. And so there's this cute little phrase that he used to say about Figment. And both the Dreamfinder and the Dragon Figment, which was voiced by Billy Barty, imagine things to fill in the idea bag. And this did not stay around for very long. It was really only there 1983, 1988, so 5 years. Then it turned into Journey into Your Imagination from 1999 to 2001, and people absolutely hated it. So this opened next to it was based on the attraction Honey, I Shrunk the Audience that we just talked about, that was in the theater next door. And that had opened 5 years prior. But guests were given a tour of the Imagination Institute and made test subjects for the new invention of the Imagination Scanner. Dr. Nigel Channing, who was played by Eric Idle, who kind of reprised his role from Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, hosted this version. And then also present were Philip Brainerd from Flubber and Dean Higgins from the Dexter Riley films. So the ride kind of began with guests going through the scanner and being told they had no imagination. Then they kind of send them through the Institute labs of sound, illusion, color, connections, and gravity. And so the first room is sound, and it's kind of totally silent and completely dark. And then you hear crickets chirping, city noises, and then this train. And the second room, illusion, there's a fish swimming in and out of the tank and a cage with an empty butterfly that kind of disappears, which is similar to what's there today. The third room, which was the color lab at the time, there's these unique sounds of jungle animals and cities that cause two large lights on the screens to change color to match the sounds. And then in connection, the room was covered with all these stars that turned in to form constellations. The last room was the gravity lab, where they enter this upside down house, which is still there today, but just changed a little bit. And for the finale, they go through the scanner and the machine explodes with the audience to see this light show. So, this is similar to what it is today, but people really didn't like the change. They really liked the original ride. So then they decided to open the current version in 2002, which really has been unchanged since then. And Figment kind of came back with this bigger role. He's in every single scene in the current ride. And then the end at the of the ride now has the song One Little Spark, which returned. It was in the initial version as well, but the Dreamfinder was still absent. So currently, the Institute has five different labs, and Dr. Nigel Channing, which is played by Eric Idle from the previous incarnation, invites guests to the Institute's open house. And Figment, who's now voiced by Dave Goelz, tags along and kind of causes some mischief along the way. So there's the sound, sight, smell, touch, and taste labs. And the song One Little Spark, not surprising, was written by the Sherman Brothers for the original Journey into the Imagination attraction. And the original version of the song was performed by these audio animatronic characters, the Dream Finder, Chuck McCann, like we said, and his creation Figment, Billy Barty. But the new version is performed by Eric Idle and Dave Goelz. And at the end of the ride, when you get off, there's this whole big, it's supposed to be play area section called Image Works. And it's like the What If Labs, where there's this interactive exhibit that is supposed to be there for kids to mess around with when they finish on the ride. But before its 1998 closure, the attraction was actually originally going to be named Image Works and was located, or it was named Image Works, the ending area, but it was actually upstairs in the upstairs area of the Imagination Pavilion. And these What If Labs saw the addition of new interactive musical and digital exhibits. And at the time, Kodak also originally sponsored these What If Labs. They closed their sponsorship in 2010. And then in 2012, sponsorship of the area was assumed by Color Vision, which is a company that operates these green screen photo kiosks. So in June 2016, the ImageWorks staircase that used to go upstairs was actually reopened as a lounge for Disney Vacation Club members, and I believe that's still open today. But the original ImageWorks is still believed to be intact, even though they've kind of walled off everything upstairs. So now the actual downstairs area when you exit the ride is mostly used for the Figment meet and greet, and then Joy from Inside Out is in there sometimes as well. But what do you remember about this attraction, Dad? I know this is one that I love and I never want to miss, but most people hate. So where's which camp are you in?
Well, hate's a strong word. So I won't say
Dislike.
I won't say I hate it, but if it blows up tomorrow, I'm good. No,
Yeah.
um, I yeah, I don't know. I know you always liked it. I think a lot of the younger kids liked it. I know Makaya liked it when she was little. I think a lot of people walk out of there. A lot of adults walk out of there kind of like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
Trying to really get their head around what they just witnessed. But it's cute. Um, I wish the dream. I remember the Dreamfinder. Going back a little bit, my sister Tira, your aunt Tira, took her kids there in the '80s, and they had this picture of their kids with the Dreamfinder and Figment. I didn't know what characters those were. I had no idea they were like Disney characters in my head. I said, "Who's
Yeah.
that?" And my niece says, "Oh, that's the Dreamfinder and Figment." And the guy's walking around and has this little Figment puppet, and I guess he was real popular. He kind of interacted with people, all over that area of Epcot. So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you could find something like that on YouTube or something. I'd have to check it out. But yeah, I don't have a. I can't say that I run over there to that attraction at Rope Drop. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think many people do. It rarely has a wait, and sometimes it's posted as 15 minutes or 10 minutes, but I have not waited for this attraction more than 5 minutes in ever, maybe actually. There is a Fast Pass Plus for like Lightning Lane, whatever they're calling it these days for this, but it'd kind of be a waste because it honestly, you almost always walk right on. Have you been upstairs in that section into the What If Labs? I don't remember that. Did we ever go up there when we went on that first trip before we moved to Florida?
No, no, no. I think we were just in awe of Epcot walking around. You go there for the first time, you're just like looking around like, wow, there's just so much to see. I remember seeing that later. They're going, what's up there? I think they made that a pass holder lounge at one point. I
Okay.
thought, I thought and it was very short-lived, but no, I always wanted to go up there, but I never had a chance to go. So, I like to check it out.
Yeah, it'd be cool to go up there and kind of see what you can see and what they think is like walled off from the previous. I'll definitely have to look into some old YouTube videos of what used to be up there with these what if labs. It's cool. And then moving into the dining for this section of the park, The first is the Connections Cafe and the Connections Eatery. So this opened April 27th, 2002. The Connections Cafe is basically the half of this section of the restaurant that is a Starbucks. It does have occasional special offerings for different festivals, but it's pretty much like a full-blown regular Starbucks that serves all kinds of different coffee concoctions. And then the eatery side serves things like burgers, chicken sandwiches, pizzas, salads, and black bean burgers. The entrees, I believe, do not come with a side here, though. So you have to pay for like your fries separately unless you get a kid's meal. And entrees range from like $11 to $15 without a side. So it is a little bit pricey for theme park food. They do also have this blood orange hibiscus margarita for $16. And the kids' meals are a little more reasonable. They include cheeseburger, chicken skewers, chicken strips, and cheese pizza. And they do come with a side, FYI, and they're $8. So the last time I went with Eiley, I got a kids' meal because it was much more affordable and still like plenty of food for me. They do also have some special shakes here. They have this apple pie gelato shake, a Madagascar vanilla shake, and this mango coconut milk shake. So different things depending on people's dietary needs, but they're all 7.50 each. And this is one of the places that has a drink refill station. So it's great if you have a big cup that you like to refill with water. You can fill it with ice and water there. And they also have refillable soda. So if you buy a soda, you can go back up and fill it up, because you paid for it. So I always like to find restaurants where they have that because it's convenient to get a free refill on your, $7 Coke you pay for or whatever they're charging these days, and to fill up the water cups. That's like a big plus for us with ice and water that's not from like a gross hot water fountain. But we ate here with you guys, Dad. Did you get a burger here? I know I've had pizza and burgers here before.
Yes, I know. I've had both there before. It's your typical theme park, nothing overly over the top, but at the time it was reasonable. If you could call, theme park food reasonable. But yeah, I remember eating there probably a number of times.
Yeah. And then the festival favorites, this is like a little booth that's kind of right outside of Connections, and it has different festival offerings that change based off of which festival is happening at the time. So that menu kind of rotates and prices change based off of the festivals, but they're all kind of right there, right outside of Guardians of the Galaxy, actually. And it took over some of the old Intervention space that they redid when they did this big reno of the park. The character meet and greets in this section of the park include Joy and Figment. Those are the only two that are technically in this World Celebration area, and they're both within the actual Figment attraction, like I said, at the end of the ride. We've done both. Figment does not sign, so FYI for people who are big into signatures like we are, he gives a little card with his signature, which is kind of sad, similar to Olaf at Hollywood Studios. It must be too difficult for them to sign in that costume, but Joy does sign. So we've had her sign one of our frame mats before, and Eiley really liked Joy. Blake was very freaked out by Figment. Eiley now is obsessed with Figment also. We have the little Figment golden book. We have a little Figment plushie. She's all into Figment, which makes me happy, but Blake was terrified of him. She was like this huge, 10-foot dragon. She was not into it. And then another notable experience that we couldn't not talk about since we're in this section of the park, but that is Club Cool by Coca-Cola. And this technically opened November 14th, 2005. It actually opened initially as something called Ice Station Cool in June of 1998. And it features complimentary samples of Coca-Cola soft drinks from around the world, kind of similar to the World of Coke tasting area in Atlanta, Georgia, except Atlanta actually has like real good Coke offerings, unlike unlike this place. The actual Ice Station Cool initial attraction was themed to this polar exploration, decorated with this vehicle and a caveman frozen in ice, which I definitely remember as a kid. It closed June 6, 2005, and reopened November 14th of that same year as Club Cool. And the samples that they gave at the time was there for almost 14 years until it closed in 2019 for this big renovation that they were supposed to do. So the attraction actually, got relocated and reopened September 15th, 2021, along with the Creations gift shop, and moved to Innovations East, where Mouse Gear was becoming part of World Celebration. after it reopened on September 15th, 2021, they now offer 8 flavors. So we'll kind of talk through the flavors here. The Beverly is the one that I hear the most about. People are like, some people really love it. It's from Italy. It's this very bitter, non-alcoholic aperitif. Aperitif, I don't even know how you say that. Aperitif. And it is the only beverage to have been maintained in all the rotations, which I don't understand. I think it's gross. I'm assuming you also concur, Dad.
Yeah, I think it's nasty. I think most people that I know, we always said, "Hey, try this," for a joke, and they end up like spitting it out. It's so bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there's right now currently Bon Bon Anglaise, which is this tropical fruit drink, Country Club Meringue, which is a smooth, creamy tropical fruit drink, Minute Maid, which is apple lychee, Royal Watermelon, which is sour watermelon flavored soda. Ugh. Smart Sour Plum, which is a tart plum flavored soda, Sprite Cucumber, which is a cucumber hinted variation of Sprite, Viva Raspberry, which is raspberry flavored soda. So those are all what are there currently. So the whole point of this are these are different countries' unique soda flavors. So they, pick different countries that are there for the rotations. And then some previous flavors, so ones that were removed October 29th, 2013 that used to be there were Smart Watermelon, Kinley Lemon, Fanta Colita, Lift
Kinley
Apple,
lemon, yes, yes, my favorite.
yeah, and then Mezzo
I
Mix and
remember that was
Crest
my
Ginger
favorite
Ale.
every time. I love that. Sorry.
What does it taste like? Was it like Sprite kind of or 7 Up or something?
Yeah, it was like Sprite, and of course, as you know, your dad loves soda. He's a soda head, and if you're from Michigan, I'm a pop head, I guess. But yeah, I always I couldn't pass up going in there. We always went in there all the time with you guys and my friends over the years, and I'd always have them. We'd always have them drink the nasty stuff. The Beverly. It was great, but yeah, we stopped there all the time. I have pretty fond memories of just that silly place. I didn't know they brought it back. I thought it was closed before COVID, and I thought it stayed closed, but it's come back, right? That's what you're
Yeah,
saying. So that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. It's come back. It's in a different spot, but it has come back. Yeah. Yeah, and Kinley Lemon is an Israeli drink. I
Okay.
do kind of remember that being the good one. There was one I thought from Mexico or something, maybe the Mezzo mix. That wasn't that bad either. None of them were like, I want to drink a gallon of this, but some of them were like more palatable, tolerable than others. Um,
Yeah.
there were some other ones, Guarana Quat, Inca Cola, Sparletta, Vegeta Beta, Bebo, Fanta Melon Frosty, and Fanta Pineapple. So those are all the ones. Fanta Pineapple, I feel like would probably be good, but they probably got rid of that quick because people were
Mhm.
drinking too much of it. I feel like the one people really like, they don't keep because then people are in there drinking free soda all day or something. But yeah, definitely a unique experience. And now they do have that Coca-Cola restaurant in downtown Disney or Disney Springs. So I wonder, I know they do sell, they
Yes.
actually sell and people pay for the Beverly there, which I don't understand. Again, why? Why do that to yourself? Another thing I wanted to touch on was the fountain that used to be at the Epcot entrance, kind of on the other side once you walked through to the other side of the park from Interventions. Now it's this reimagined version that replaced the original fountain that had opened with the park in 1982. And it's supposedly designed to be a welcoming centerpiece of the plaza, celebrating the park's past, present, and future. And the new fountain area at Epcot has this bronze statue of Walt Disney that's named Walt the Dreamer, and that's located in Dreamer's Point, kind of within the World Celebration Gardens. I remember going to this when it first reopened. I believe it was with Regan in the challenge was the first time I saw it. And I was so disappointed. I couldn't believe that they got rid of that beautiful fountain that was timed with the lights and the music of Epcot and put in this like ugly bronze like garden thing that like it's I mean it's just a huge space that now feels like such a big waste. And the Walt the Dreamer statue's cool, but they could have added that and kept the old beautiful fountain. I don't know, Dad, what did you think of this section when we walked through it last year?
Yeah, it was a letdown. I saw it on YouTube videos a little bit ahead of time, so I wasn't totally shocked, but as we all are probably that are Disney fans or maybe real big Epcot fans, COVID kind of destroyed the whole vision of what they were going to try and do there, which was pretty amazing. And they just kind of, I'm sure they lost a lot of money during COVID and for a variety of other reasons. And they just kind of filled it in with, was it the Moana, Moana water
Yeah.
attraction and some other things in there, and it just they just fell short. And I'm sure most people that know Epcot would agree. It's it's not the same place that it was, unfortunately. I would have been better off just leaving it the way it was and maybe updating some of those areas that were kind of interventions areas, that were really tired and needed something, put an attraction in there or something. But yeah, I love Epcot, but I'm very disappointed in the front part of Epcot. World Showcase is still great, but it's unfortunate I don't want to say they destroyed it, but the center part is nowhere near what it was before. It was all so beautiful walking through there.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think like interventions definitely needed some kind of reboot, and it was, a section that it was hard to keep up because things just changed so quickly. But it really just, I don't know, it just did not feel like that was a great use of space. And it still feels kind of empty. Like when I walk through, there's just like not that much, like you said, not that much going on. There's the meet and greet area. Yeah, the little restaurant on the other side and then the Moana, obviously outdoor thing, but it just doesn't feel like they use that space wisely. So I'm curious how long it will stay like that before they end up redoing it again or they use that. I know the Moana thing might not change because that's probably pretty expensive, but some of that stuff behind there and the meet and greet area, I just can't imagine that they're gonna, get keep that forever because it just wasn't really a great, I don't know, use of their money and time. So then moving on to kind of wrapping up Epcot, what are your top five and bottom five attractions, Dad, when you are going through the parks? And we did not talk about this ahead of time because I actually didn't do my homework. And right before we started to record, I had to kind of think about this quickly. But Dad did do his homework. So what is your favorite?
Well, these are in no specific order. I can switch them around, but my top five are definitely Spaceship Earth, Guardians, even though I've only ridden it once. I loved it. That was absolutely amazing.
Hmm.
Soarin', Ratatouille, and American Adventure. And I have to give Living with the Land a nod. People might say, "Are you kidding?" But I
Yeah.
really still like watching the plants grow.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. Yeah, so my top five are Guardians of the Galaxy, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, Soarin', Test Track, and Living with the Land was my fifth. So yeah, I also really like the plants growing. I think it's really cool. I think as I've gotten older and gotten more into gardening, I think it's super interesting the way that they grow the plants, and I would like to do the behind the scenes tour. I think that would be really cool. So those are definitely my top five. So what are your bottom five, Dad?
All right, don't hate me for this.
Uh-oh.
No particular order, but these are five attractions that could go away tomorrow, and I would be just fine.
Yeah.
Figment,
Oh no.
Mission Space, Frozen,
Oh, Frozen. Oh
and
my gosh.
all that bring back North. No, was it the Nordstrom? What was it? The North.
Yeah, yeah, Maelstrom, Maelstrom.
I get Nordstrom. I'm thinking of the store.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's late. And my final one to do would be in my bottom five would be all the movies. Just take them all out and be done with it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Wow, the Frozen is a hot take. That's funny. I'm surprised you didn't say Moana instead of Frozen.
I guess I didn't even think of that. I don't really consider that an attraction. That's just my personal opinion. It's like a walk
Yeah.
through a bunch of,
Yeah,
plants and
that's
water fountains.
funny. Okay, so I'd say my number one to remove is Mission Space. I really like could do without that. It's just not my favorite at all. And then my number two thing is Awesome Planet, the movie that's in the Land Pavilion. I think they could do something different there as well. The Pixar short series, I'm definitely not married to that. I wish that they could get rid of it. I don't wish they could get rid of the entire thing, but the Grand Fiesta Tour, the Three Caballeros, I wish that they would redo it. I wish they would like update it in some way. I just think it's not the best use of space. And then if I had to pick a last attraction, I don't wish they would get rid of the living seas or the seas, but again, an update. So doing something different with the whole space that they use for the queue that's just so empty. I wish that they would do something different because no one waits in that long of a queue. They could use that space for maybe more exhibits or do something a little bit different. So those are my kind of bottom five attractions. But yeah, Mission Space is number one. The rest of them are no particular order. It's just that ride is horrible. So that could go for sure. Okay, and then moving on into our old versus new for today. So the old versus new, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but is the Honey I Shrunk the Audience versus Captain EO versus Pixar Shorts Film Festival. So of the three, you had kind of already said Honey I Shrunk the Audience is your choice. Is that right?
Hands down.
Me too. I also would choose that. I'm also down for something new to go in there. That's not any of these options, but if I had to pick, I think Honey, I Shrunk the Audience is definitely the one that I would want to come back and be in there. And then our trivia question for today is which prominent actor is used to do the pre-show for Mission Space, which I like just went on this and I still don't even remember. Tim Allen, Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis, or Gary Sinise? Sinise? How do you say his name?
Shanice.
Sinise.
Shanice. Yes. He was in yeah, he was in a lot of movies, a lot of war movies actually. Great guy. Let's see. Okay. It's either I think it's either Gary Sinise or Tom Hanks because I think both of them were in Apollo 13, the movie. So it's got to be my guess. It's
Ah,
got to be one of those guys. So I have to pick one. I'll go with Gary Sinise.
okay. I'm gonna say Bruce Willis, even though I don't think that's right. But I think you're right because I don't remember any of the other three being in there. I think it is Gary. Oh, it is Gary Sneeze. That's funny. Yes, he is the correct one.
And
Get
he
that
has
out
a
of here.
tie to the Candlelight Processional. He does that quite often. So there's
Okay.
that connection with Disney already. So that would have been an easy, hey, come on over and do this narration or do this little
Oh,
thing for
yeah, yeah. Okay, I just looked up his
your mission
picture.
space. So that would make sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I looked up his picture. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Now
Forrest
I
Gump.
know. Yeah, CSI. That's like what I think I know him as. Forrest Gump, CSI. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just didn't know his name. That's funny. Okay, cool. Well, that is everything for Epcot. Any like final thoughts on Epcot or anything you like definitely recommend people to do or not do when they visit, Dad?
Well, like any park, get there early. If you can get there at rope drop, you just save at any of the parks, right? You just save so much time. We're always really masters of that, getting there early and knocking out the attractions quickly. And then you can actually enjoy the park a little bit more as time goes on. But Epcot's a really big park, clearly an all-day park. And the show, I haven't seen the latest evening show. I know they've had some amazing ones over the last few years. I know they've changed it up recently again, which is crazy expensive
Yeah.
for them to do that. But make sure, regardless, that you check out the nighttime show. Stay all day and enjoy it because it's a great park. It is definitely a great park.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely get there for rope drop. If you have little kids, I recommend rope dropping Remy. If you don't, then rope drop Guardians of the Galaxy and then pay to ride it again because it's worth it. But you can knock out a lot in the early hours, especially if you're staying at a Disney resort and you have those, extra magic hours. That makes a huge, huge difference. Those 30 minutes, even though it doesn't seem like much. And yeah, the nighttime show is called Luminous. And I did see it last year with Gretchen, and it's good. It's a good fireworks show. It's not my favorite, and it's not my favorite that Epcot has had. I really, really loved, the illuminations, reflections of Earth that they had there forever. That was such a cool show with the globe, and the music was just really good. So I loved Illuminations, but I also really loved the show that they had after that. And now I think it was Harmonious. And that was one where they had these, kind of big things in the middle of the water, but the music for that one was really cool. They had all the different, classic songs and they had them in different languages and then it was just really beautiful. But for that one it was hard because you had to kind of have a good spot to be able to see the things in the middle of the water versus the current one, Luminous. It's all really in the sky, so you can get a good spot anywhere. But my advice if you're going to watch the fireworks show, depending on where you're staying, if you're staying on property somewhere or if you're staying in an Epcot resort or a Skyliner resort, watch the show from the bridge right by the UK going over to France because that's a great spot. If you're not, then another great spot is along the World Showcase, kind of over by Norway, between Norway and China. There's a kind of a big open area that if you get there early by the water. But yeah, it's a really good show. It's not my, again, not my favorite. Phantasmic will always be my favorite, I think, but it's worth watching. It's about 20 minutes long. So yeah, Epcot overall, it's had a lot of really, in my opinion, really good changes and some really not great changes over the years, but I love what they did with Guardians of the Galaxy. Does it necessarily belong in Epcot? Maybe not. Probably more of like a Hollywood Studios type of ride, but the ride itself is awesome. I like the way that they've moved IP into some of these lands to bring more people back there. So I'm excited to see what comes in the coming years. So yeah. All right. Well, we are going to be, moving over to Animal Kingdom here and looking forward to getting to discuss some of that park. That is obviously the smallest in number of attractions park, but a very large footprint as far as the size of the actual acreage of the park because of all the animals. They've got a pretty large space reserved and protected for the animals and for the park. So we will get into that next, and we're looking forward to diving into it with you guys. Have a great week.
See you next week.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. If you're listening on Apple, hit that 5-star button and leave us a written review as well. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.